I go to a lot of author conferences, and either in the middle of it or at the end, invariably, there are always writers who I talk to about what their experience was like when they were at this conference. And they will always say, I have so much I want to do. There's so many things I want to do. And they'll have lists, and sometimes they've been to 10 or 15 workshops and they want to do one or two things from each one. And they're so excited. And that enthusiasm, it feels like it's going to buoy them into further accomplishment in the future. And so often, what happens is we let that enthusiasm stymie us from getting the prioritization done. So, in this episode today, I want to talk about why some of us feel this need to do everything and whether or not it's beneficial, because of course, for some of us, it's beneficial, and then what to do about it. And specifically, this is geared towards either I'm listening to all the things workshop, podcast, etc., or I'm going to or returning from a conference, coming home and trying to figure out what to do. So, I hope this will help you. Let's get into it. So, as an author coach, I do tend to be the person that people process this kind of stuff with when they get really excited about all of the things that they want to do. And always what I see either at the end of our conferences, because we run virtual conferences about twice a year, or at the end of in person conferences that I speak at, there is this contagious enthusiasm about wanting to do all the things. And I always have a moment of, okay, I don't want to rain on anyone's parade, right? I don't want to say, well, you're probably not going to accomplish all of this when you get home. And so I try not to do that sort of negative talk, but I do also want to make sure that they execute narrowly. So there are a couple of things that I suggest when it comes down to the quote unquote doing all of the things. And I want to start off by having a conversation about what you value the most about this author career. Because I think this gets lost sometimes when we're just thinking about what should I be executing on? What's the right thing for me to execute? And again, that's resulting. So wanting to know what's going to make the biggest impact before you actually have the data to know what did make the biggest impact is resulting. And you often can't know whether or not the thing that you're going to do is going to have a bigger impact than something else. And the desire to know that tells me that there's some other kind of fear going on there. And so I want us to have some more clarity about what is it that we really want to get out of this author career. And if you've been around here for very long, you know that we talk about the Enneagram as well as strengths and all of the Enneagram stuff that we do for authors. We refer to or refer people, we either refer people towards or we discuss information that my friend Claire Taylor talks about. Both reclaim your author career and sustain your author career is she talks about what is it that people want at their core. What is the thing that you're hoping to get out of this experience of writing or of life? And the most important thing in particular, because I think when we don't know what it is that we value the most about this, when we don't know what we want to get out of it the most, then we often can't make decisions about what's going to be the highest value target, because this is the first thing that I want us to determine before we decide what it is that we're going to do post conference. So when we're discussing post con, post workshop, post podcast, post input deluge, what should I accomplish? What we're always looking for is where to start. And unfortunately, I think where we often start is either we get overwhelmed and don't do a lot of things because there's so many things to do, we can't decide which one to prioritize, or we end up starting from the thing that feels the most urgent, which often has to do with fear rather than with desire. So the reason I start with knowing what it is that you want to get out of your author career and starting there as a decision maker is specifically because I want to combat this fear and urgency around what happens if I don't get this thing that I want. Because that fear and urgency, if you remember our anchors and magnets talk that we did a couple of months ago on this Quitcast, or if you've ever heard Claire Taylor talk about the fear and desire of the Enneagram, you understand that that fear will often hold you back by telling you that it's pushing you towards. So you get really, really worried that you're not going to be significant enough. And so you inadvertently do things that ensure you won't be significant because the fear is keeping you from taking the chance. We want to be as cautious as possible about doing something that will move the needle objectively on a high value target for us. So, what is the thing that I want the most? And I think it's important to think about this before you go to the conference or before you sit down and listen to the workshops or before you're evaluating the work that you want to do after listening to a podcast. Because you need to know objectively what it is that makes you excited about this. What is it that you want to get more of out of this career? And unfortunately, what a lot of people are going to answer is, well, I want money. And that is the hardest thing to make decisions about because most of the way that we think about money is actually resulting in this industry. We are using someone else's experiments as an expectation that if I just do this thing that made them a lot of money, then I will also make a lot of money. And so often, the making of money in this industry comes from the alignment of us writing the right book at the right time for the right people. And that right is not determined by what someone else says. It's not determined by a workshop presenter or a coordinator or a marketing coach, or it's not determined by any of those things. It's determined by, and I hate to say this because I don't think that this is an accurate representation, but it's ultimately determined by Loki on some level. It is the roll of the dice. Did I do this correctly? And so, and I know I'm not saying that intention and smartness and timing don't have anything to do with it. What I am saying is when we have this energy and we want to make sure we do the highest value target, we need to understand what the target is that we're aiming at. What is the thing that we want to get out of this experience of writing? Because if we come home all excited to do 15,000 different things on TikTok because we've heard that TikTok is the only place people are selling, quote unquote, because that kind of stuff goes around at workshops. It is a fear response that people use to try to be heard and listened to in a way that is actually confirmation bias, and it isn't true. There are so many different ways to sell books, and TikTok is just one of them. It's not even the most reliable way to sell books because so much of it depends on luck and timing when you're executing there. But when we come back from this experience of learning and now we're trying to decide what to do, we often use someone else's urgency instead of our own focus as a way of determining. So if you have a capacity of discussing your post-conference experience with somebody who has high focus and you have already done the work, like you've done a values sort where you actually had to take lists of values and pick out which ones are the most important to you, which ones are the ones you want to see happen in your author career. And then you make your decisions going towards those values of yours rather than listening to somebody else's urgency. So that can be a really important option if you have access to somebody who has the Clifton Strengths theme of focus. That could be a good idea. Sometimes all you need is to talk out loud to someone who's a friend who will help ask you the right questions to sort through what it is exactly that you want to do. Sometimes what you need is to look at the timing of what needs to happen. So the focus, the prioritization mechanism that you pick may be your own values, it may be timing, but I think a lot of us don't think about values ahead of time. So I want you, if you've never done this before, I want you to sit down with a list of values and you can pick one from the internet. I'm not interested necessarily in what the list itself says because anybody who's doing value sorting is giving you a significant number. I think the one that I use is like 101 different values that you could possibly have. So for me, when I'm going through and sorting and prioritizing those, and then I'm seeing like, what are my top values that I now have that I know this is what I want to get out of my author career, then I can look at the action points that I'm getting out of these workshops and think which one of these align with the values that I have, which one of them are going to get me more of what I want out of this author career, and not just assuming that someone's urgency about money is going to be the thing that's actually going to make me the money. If the intuition that you have is to go ahead and start on something only because of the money that it promises you that it will make, then go ahead and do that. I just want to make sure you have the objectivity of having watched yourself come back from conference after conference. And maybe that is the answer, the step that you need to take, the answer to the question of what do I do when I come back and why can't I do all the things, is to look backwards and see how it's worked for you in the past. So if you're a person who has high futuristic or high positivity, you are going to think that you can do more than you can just by nature. It's not a bug, it's a feature, essentially. So if you're the type of person who thinks that you can do more than you can, and you tend to actually get more accomplished if you let yourself want to do a whole bunch of things, then I would be on the lookout for your overwhelm point. Where is it that you're getting frustrated and frozen and you're not able to make progress because you have 15 things on the list instead of 12? But if you have 12, then you'll naturally prioritize, but you may only accomplish 7 of them. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't still want to do 12. It just means you shouldn't guilt yourself or frustrate yourself if you only do 7 out of the 12. But you want to aim at doing whatever doesn't overwhelm you, because some of you are getting overwhelmed with the amount of stuff that there is to do because there just are too many potential options of what you could possibly try to do to make money in this industry. And we teach strengths as a way of sorting those things out. Because if I know, for instance, I'm really high relator, I mean, I'm not personally, but if I knew that about myself, and I was coming home from a conference with a whole bunch of people telling me things that I should be doing on social media, my first question is going to be, do I like social media and do I want to do social media? Because if I don't like it and I don't want to do it, then I should say no to it, because it is less and less likely, if it doesn't align with something that I'm great at, that I'm going to have wild success with it, unless I'm willing to forsake all other things in order to learn how to do this. And many of us just are not willing to do that. Like, we want to learn how to do this really hard thing that we are not very good at alongside everything else that we have to keep maintaining with all the plates spinning. And what I'm saying to us is there is a way to narrow down and focus on things that are more beneficial for us, not to a point where it might overwhelm you either, because some of you, if you only go down to one thing, like we get this feedback from when I do the Write Better Faster class, that sometimes only focusing on one thing is too much. Like it's too overwhelming. There's too much pressure because only one feels like the stakes are so high that I can't fail at this, or I can't possibly spend all of my time doing this thing. So I can't just focus on one thing at a time, or I need to have a whole bunch of things to pick from. If that is your personality, then it's okay for you to be that way. I just want to make sure that we are being conscious of how our brains and bodies are reacting to things. So if you come home and you find yourself not wanting to look at the list, then you want to give yourself a day, especially if you have high intellection. You want to give yourself a day to process it. If you just finish a whole big digital conference, you may need to give yourself a whole day to process it and let the important stuff come up to the top and not put too much pressure on yourself. But so many of us are not listening to what our brain and body are telling us. We're just doing things that other people are telling us we should be doing, and we have no sense for whether or not this is the best thing for us or not. Does this actually work for me or not? Am I happy? Am I executing effectively? Like, we're not actually thinking about a lot of those things. So I just want us to ask the question, if I'm the type of person who gets overwhelmed easily by a lot of things to do, would it be better for me to say no to some things first and give myself the freedom of not being overwhelmed? Or would it be better for me to give in to FOMO and just allow myself to get nothing done because I want to do everything? And at some point, you have to decide that you are willing to start missing out on things because you want to execute more and you want to get more done, because the overwhelm has been taking over every decision that you've been making in the past. And so many of us are in this overwhelm state where we're listening to everything and we don't actually know what's going to make the difference. And we are not willing to just say no to things and to try something. And I'm going to encourage you The first thing I want you to do if you are this type of person is I want you to listen to what is your intuition about what you want to do. What is the thing that feels the easiest or feels the most fun or feels the most exciting? That's something I'd like you to consider trying first because any way that you sort those pieces of information, this is kind of the I guess second level hack that I will say. When you feel overwhelmed by something, any sorting methodology would be helpful to get you out of the overwhelm. So rather than trying to stick to, but it has to make the most sense, it has to make the most money, it has to be, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So much in our author career determines not on us making the smartest choices, but on just making a choice and moving forward. And this is the old sort of entrepreneurial adage that we hear a lot from people in the startup community, which is just go, fail fast, try things. If it doesn't work, quit and move on. And that willingness to just make quick decisions and try something and experiment and do something is a pretty big hallmark of a lot of those successful, very big business people. So the more I can watch them act quickly and watch them just prioritize and sort, they may be prioritizing differently from me, but the goal is not to prioritize in the best way, it's to prioritize at all. So if my prioritizer is what do I want to do? What do I feel like doing? What's the easiest? What's the most fun? You can have prioritizers that are what's the smartest. It would depend on if you had a background where you felt like it was okay for you to evaluate those things and you would trust yourself. You could prioritize by asking someone else what they thought. But again, you risk being overwhelmed with opinions and then not being able to take action. So just be conscious of that. But if your goal is to execute, you have to be willing to use something as a prioritizer. And I'm just trying to convince you to use anything that's accessible. If you have any level of intuition about anything at all that you could be executing, that would be my preference. I would rather see you do that than wait around for the best thing to emerge because when we have, and some of this comes from stakes, some of it comes from having high strategic, some of it comes from achiever or significance or competition. But if we have this desire to only ever make the best decision and to never make bad decisions, to never fail, never do things wrong, never quote, waste time, that's the opposite of the experimentation mentality. And so much of writing requires the experimentation mentality to be present in order to be successful, because you have to be willing to see if you can do it. So the metric that I often use with learning is that when you learn something from a book, workshop, podcast, person, or class structure, right? You can only know 50% of it. The other 50% you understand by doing it. So you can only learn in knowledge about half of anything. And a lot of people think that because they've taken a course in something, they've read a book about something, they've listened to a workshop or a podcast, that they now know that thing. But the reality is, there is so much that you have to learn from experience. And if you haven't seen this yet, I will post this, the Threads, Instagram, and Facebook post that I did on social media recently about what is the lesson that experience has taught you if you've been publishing for more than 15 years that you would want to teach someone else. Like if you could say, this is the thing I could have only learned by doing. That's that second half that I want us to be in consideration of when we're deciding how to prioritize. Whatever looks the smartest in the first 50% may or may not actually be the smartest thing. It may or may not actually be the thing that gets you where you want to go. It may just look smart at first. There's no way that you can know whether it will be the smartest thing or not. And those of you who are high strategics who are trying to result your way into knowing for sure that something is going to work before you do it, you cannot know every time. There's always going to be that 3 to 5% of times that you just are not going to have any idea about. And you have to be willing to still take action. So some of us need to prioritize down, right? Like I talked at the very beginning about the people who you need to pick things that are aligned with your values. Some of us who have a high level of enthusiasm or high positivity, we may want to pick a few more things. People with ADHD and that positivity, you kind of need to find the correct number of things that won't overwhelm you, but also won't make you feel like you don't need to take action and have no pressure. So you want to look back at your context and see what is it that I have done in the past that hasn't worked and how do I do something differently now? And then additionally, we have got to learn how to learn from experience, which means we have to miss out on things that we could have been doing with that potential of execution in front of us, and we want to know which of the ones is going to make the difference. Use anything as a prioritizer and take action on something. So my goal at the end of every conference, every workshop, every mini con or digital con that we do is to just see you take action on one thing. And I usually encourage people to pick based on intuition, like what is it that you feel is the thing that you could easily and quickly do right now? What's almost like a fast win, but my emphasis is on fast rather than you don't actually know if it's going to win or not. I just want you to feel like you are executing after you are finished learning. So here's what I want you to do after you watch this episode or listen to this episode. I want you to do something like the values sort, where you go through a list of values and you rank them in how much do I care about this 1 to 5, and then you put all the ones together, all the twos together, threes and fours and fives together. And then out of the ones that are the most important, you pick the 10 that are the most important, and those become the things that you focus on. And I have a little list of mine on a spreadsheet that every time I have to make a decision, I now go and look at how it aligns with these particular 10 values, the things that I want to get the most out of life. And that has changed some of the decisions that I make, because there are some things that I used to do that I would think were easy options. This is an easy choice for me to make because it's simple and easy for me to do. But I realize that's not one of my values, is not actually efficiency. One of my values is definitely comfort. Like I want to be comfortable. But me being comfortable in 10 years or 5 years or a year is vastly superior to me being comfortable today. And so that's a switch that I'm making in my life, because my value of comfort, I want it to be sustainable for my lifetime, which means that sometimes I have to have discomfort in the moment so that I can have comfort in the long run. But you have to think deeply sometimes about these values and how you really get them and how they work in your life. And for some of you, you've just never done this before. So I want you to consider going and doing that right now. And again, you can Google list of values and you're going to come up with a whole bunch of different things. But I want you to consider doing that as one of your options. The other thing, and I'm going to encourage you every single time I possibly can, is to open the manuscript. So, no matter what happens when you come home from a conference, the most important priority that I want you to do, because it's the only thing that doesn't come attached with innate urgency to it, is I want you to open the manuscript. So, right now, you're listening to this, go open the manuscript right now. We will end this talk. And then I'm going to say, if you can write, go ahead and write. And if you can keep writing, keep writing. And if you can't write, go think or go research or go do something else. Go edit, go reread your manuscript, do something else. But open that manuscript, put your attention at where that cursor is at the very end, and just ask, can I write the next sentence? That's all I want you to do. And for some of you, that's the only thing you need to prioritize, because the other stuff will easily prioritize itself. It has a natural urgency built into it. So go open the manuscript, ask yourself, can you write the next sentence? And then if you can, keep writing. And if you can't, go find the inspiration or the problem or the idea or the piece of information that you need in order to start writing. And then maybe ask yourself if you can open the manuscript in the morning and see if you can write tomorrow. All right. I know that it's painful that we can't just do everything, but we do have a limited time on this earth. We don't have an unlimited ability to just make whatever decisions we want to make. So I want to see us making the most important decisions that we can that will give us the most of what we want out of this life. So thank you everybody for listening today. I hope this was helpful. We will see you next time on the Quitcast. Bye everyone.